Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI. I'm your host, Doug, from Ontario, Canada. I hope everybody's having a good morning. Sorry, I'm a little bit late getting out here this morning. I was just trying to edit a video, and it just became a daunting task. And to even finish it, just unbelievable. But, anyways, it's all done, and glad that's over with. Community involvement with the homeless crisis that we're seeing today. The importance of, you know, getting together with family, your friends, your co-workers, and coming up with maybe a response plan of doing our part as a society. Now, we know that homelessness is both a reflection and a driver of some of the most irreparable harms communities and our society at large. These consequences are both undeniable and in many ways immeasurable, spanning social, medical, behavioral, economic, and moral costs. Although discussing these costs sometimes feels like an exercise in homeless economics, trying to understand the harms perpetuated by the homelessness, as well as the benefits that arise from effective solutions. We can build solutions that can mitigate, prevent, or even redress these harms. In doing so, we emphasize the inherent value in ending homelessness and that the moral imperative to address homelessness descends in cost benefits approach. Now, we already know too that homelessness can adversely affect virtually every aspect of a person's life from one sense of safety and to social supports to overall health and life. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Just going to back this up a little bit here because I was supposed to be out here at 9:30, and I was finishing a video this morning, and then finishing editing it, and then just uploading it to my device so I can take it and show my mom who's in a nursing home. And I've been talking about this video and stuff like that. And she's seen other videos that I made and stuff like that. But I wanted to get it done today. I didn't want to wait another week. So finally got all that figured out. But back to, the homelessness, because, reading an article the other day in the city of London, Ontario, where I reside here in Canada, city council, they don't have a winter plan in place for the homeless. City council has been arguing back and forth about funding the shelters in the downtown core. And they just seem to be divided. Then they have the Business Improvement Association you know, and other businesses, and of course the community around there. And I understand that, um, that you have concerns, not just about the shelters, but homeless people in general. And what I hear a lot of negative, um, misconceptions about the homeless. Then you hear from residents that, you know, um, their lives are disrupted, you know, because of homeless, in your community. And I can just say to you, what about the lives of the people who are homeless? Their lives are disrupted. Their lives are upside down. You have shelter. They don't. This is a problem that has been I going on for decades. And it's ironic that, cities and mayors, federal government and provincial governments now try to act on it because now it's a crisis. So we wait for that to happen. It becomes a crisis. And then now we have, okay, you can't set a tent encampment up here. You can't set it up over there. You got to keep moving around. So now they set barriers up, so where you can and cannot have a tent encampment. And part of it I do understand, you know, um, around daycares and public schools, along the riverbanks, certain parks in the city they can't set up, and so on. And then we had, like, there was something like 13 mayors across the province calling on the provincial government to invoke the notwithstanding clause in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, given, then given the power to the municipalities of just clearing out tent encampments, so there would be no tent encampments anywhere. You would just move them along. They're just going to set up someplace else anyhow. It's going to be like Keystone Cops. And then there was a mayor in Sudbury who turned around and said that, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms weren't meant for people with a mental illness and addiction. And you can't be more wrong. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects all citizens of Canada, regardless of your disability, regardless of your color of skin. Doesn't matter. So the federal government, this $250 million that they're going to be sending out across the country, and so each city and community or whatever is going to get so much money. London is getting $5 million out of that 250 million. $5 million to deal with the encampments. We already, like I said, we already had councillors turn around who are against giving more money to these shelters. And right now, the way it's been for a long time is that these shelters are in the downtown core. And they've been there. The arcade has been there for 40 plus years. The Unity Project has been there for at least 15 to 18 years. And then you have the Inner Community Center that provides services as well for the homeless. And it has been there for approximately 15 to 18 years. Businesses come and go in the downtown core. It has been going like that for decades. They've always been trying to revitalize the downtown core, get people to come down to shop. But with the downtown core, we did that to ourselves, because back in the day when I was growing up in the 60s, that's where everybody went shopping. There was no such thing as a mall. And it wasn't until the early 70s or probably middle 70s when the first mall opened up in the city. And then the downtown wanted to compete with that, so they built a mall downtown to keep people downtown. And then as the city grew and the city expanded, they built another mall. Now we got malls all over the place. Yes, we still have businesses downtown. We're building high rises downtown. People are moving downtown. And the downtown core where these shelters are. So, think about this. You're going to open up a business, and rents are expensive in the malls. They're really expensive. In downtown core, they got the street front stores, and a little bit less than rent. Lots of traffic, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of driving traffic. So what do you do as a person who's going to be opening up a business? Well, you go down there to check out the location. You go down there to check out the store, see how much footage that you have. You peruse the area. What do we have downtown that brings people downtown? Well, we got a bunch of other businesses down here. They seem to be doing okay. Oh, we got a homeless shelter right here. We got the Arcade Mission Services right here. We got the Inner Community Center right here. And we have homeless people out on the street. But you go ahead and you open your business anyways, because the rent is right. And then what do we hear? Complaints. I get it that businesses have to strive. The communities have to strive. But sitting back and just complaining about the situation isn't helping the situation. So when we're talking about people who are living out on the streets, living in encampments, and their health and well-being, and so many factors contribute to these harmful health consequences, including structural behaviors or barriers to qualify for care services. Their increased exposure to the risk factors of extreme weather, communicable diseases, violence, and avoidance of the healthcare system due to prior negative experiences with stigma and discrimination. And we have the cost to communities and systems, like I'm saying. So, given the severe consequences of homelessness for individuals and families, Um, People experiencing homelessness have comprehensive and complex needs. And without stability of secure housing needed to appropriately address these needs, individuals who experience homeless use the mainstream service systems, including the child welfare, hospitals, emergency healthcare services, criminal justice, and income support to a greater extent than stability house community members. So we got to consider the financial cost associated with the mainstream services used by individuals experience homelessness. Here in Canada, they estimated that the homeless crisis, the homeless situation, whatever, is costing the government $7 billion annually. That was set back in like 2021. This is 2024. This is probably costing the government $10 billion annually. Right. So, and including, the homeless programs designed to provide housing and services for those experiencing homelessness. So the cost to society and the harms of homelessness results in a profound cost to society at both national and global scales. Persistent and increasing homelessness provides a stark reflection of the system socio-economical inequality. And here in Canada, across the United States, everywhere, in the richest countries around the world, yet where incomes and wealth inequality is greater than almost any other developed nation, the extreme concentration of wealth among the richest 1% of households has coincided with a widening racial gap in wealth, and stemming from the intricate interplay of income inequality. You see, that's another problem with the income inequality, and for housing. When they talk about a living wage, you know, they say in the city of Toronto is the most expensive city to live here in Canada. And they think that $26 an hour is a livable wage in Toronto when you have rents that are anywhere from $2,500 a month for a one bedroom to $3,200 a month for a one bedroom. And then we move back to where I live in the city of London, Ontario, which is a couple of hours west of Toronto. They think that $19 an hour is a livable wage, probably 10 years ago. We're seeing rents here as high as they are in Toronto. And factor in the other cost of living, food. You've seen the increase in that dramatically. Clothing, your utility bills. People can't at $19 an hour, people cannot make those ends meet with the increase as high as the rents are going, and probably going to go much higher. I talked about this yesterday, housing first model. If we don't have the adequate housing and housing with supports and housing below market rent, we're not going to solve the homeless crisis. We're going to keep making homeless. That's what's going to happen. We're seeing rental evictions. Where big corporations buy up all the older properties, and then so we need to have renovations, and then you have to move out, and only to double or triple that rent. We do have rules in the Landlord Tenants Board. But the scrupulous landlords, corporations, investors, they don't care. It's all about wealth. So they use these loopholes to their advantage. So when a person gets an N13 form, that's a rental eviction form, you have to move out by such and such a date, which, by the way, you don't have to move out. Just because you got the form doesn't mean you have to move out. You have the right to be heard in the Landlord's Tenants Board tribunal. That could take months. So what happens is, the tenant has the first right of refusal. So for an example, if the tenant says, no, I'm going to be moving back in when the renovations are done, and oh, by the way, I'll still be paying the same rent. So what's happening is they don't tell the tenant when the renovations are done. They're relisted. Somebody moves in. Instead of $800 a month, now it's $1,600 or $1,800 a month. Cities are starting to put bylaws together preventing landlords from doing this. Hamilton was the first city to put their bylaw together. What that means, though, too, is that, okay, if you buy an apartment building and you're going to do a rental evictions, you're going to pay anywhere from $600 to $800 per unit to get an inspection. The inspector has to come in and inspect the property, inspect the building, inspect the units, and then determine whether or not the tenant has to move out. And then London, Ontario come up with a bylaw. Toronto just recently come up with a bylaw, but that bylaw is not going to come into effect until July 2025. Then I'm sitting back scratching my head saying, well, what the hell? Why would you create a bylaw that's not going to come in effect until July 2025? And that means any rental evictions can proceed from now until July 2025. What the hell's the point of having a bylaw if you don't make it effective immediately? Oh, and by the way, make it retroactive, so that any existing rental evictions going on, they would have to stop their work, and they're going to have to start paying for every single unit, $600 to $800 per unit to be inspected. But no, London didn't do that neither. I think Hamilton did. Toronto didn't. Social housing hasn't been built in decades. It's so the cost of homelessness are multifaceted, resulting in a whole of society impacts that cannot be ignored. Evidence demonstrating that effective solutions to homelessness can lead to substantial savings across sectors such as healthcare, the criminal justice system, the emergency system, the intergovernmental approach to ending homelessness. And this research further reminds us that while government departments and local systems often operate with isolated silos, addressing homelessness is not the sole responsibility of any single agency or communities wide. So, addressing homelessness can be achieved through proactive investments and holistic interventions rather than perpetuating a cycle of costly consequences. Communities are channeling their efforts towards comprehensive solutions with wide range benefits by placing stable, affordable housing above all else. Yes, we have to get housing built. We have to get housing built for everybody. Canada has turned around and changed its immigration system. The last couple of years, Canada, we're large in land size. Population 2 years ago was 38 million. 2022, this is 2024, now it's 40 million. And that was immigration. Newcomers come into Canada. The lack of housing. We can't build it fast enough to keep up. The cost of the materials. Of course, transportation. I mean, how do you think your house gets to where it is? It comes in, your house comes on a truck, not as assembled already. It comes on a truck. It's got to be transported to the site, and it's got to be built on the site. The cost of the sites are going up. Interest rates are up. Coming down a little bit, but not enough. Cities have to give a bit of a break on the land to the builders. But we also, if we're going to be building these high rises, we're going to be building these $800,000 homes or these $1 million homes. Well, we got to create other housing into this factor and into that community. Right? So we have to have housing that is below market rent. Not everybody are the Joneses. I can tell you this, in the city of London, Ontario, if you want to buy a house here, you better be making $150,000 a year. Because if you're not buying a house. And that $19 an hour that they think that is a living wage. You're going to need $30 an hour and up in order to afford rent. So, by placing stable, affordable housing above all else and providing a continuum of support, medical, and the social services, permanent supportive housing programs with a housing first approach can not only improve the livelihoods and well-being of individuals and families, but also to alleviate strains on public budgets over the long term. The cost and the consequences of homelessness are profound and are far-reaching, exacting a heavy toll upon individuals, communities, and society at large. The research reviewed above focuses on individuals' level outcomes of economic measures of cost that are more easily quantified. We cannot understand the burdens of homelessness that are more challenging to measure, including irremeasurable losses to people's lives and infringements on human rights, or the immense benefits that arise from solutions which extend far beyond financial figures and include qualitative improvements in family relationships and progress towards social justice. The call to end homelessness is not merely a matter of mitigating cost. It's a moral imperative to uphold the principles of equality, justice, and compassion. And this is why I've been doing my show on this. And this is why, it's so important to educate yourself about homeless, educate yourself about the stigma and misconceptions of homelessness. I recently read one book, When We Walk By, Ending Homelessness in Canada. I'm on chapter 4. I just purchased another book that came the other day, the Tenant Class. It has to do with renting. I just finished doing a video on homeless shelters. And now I'm out here talking about the homeless problem and how communities can get involved by getting together with family and brainstorming, some solutions that potentially may work. Supporting the homeless shelter system. And it always doesn't have to be money. It could be clothing, because they always need that. Women's products, they always need that. And this time of year, coming into late fall, it's cold, it's damp. In London, Ontario, where I reside, they don't have a winter plan in place. The mayor says, well, some of them will just have to stay out in the cold all winter. That's ridiculous. The unfortunate thing is that's going to be the reality. And the reality is that some are going to die. And our city of London can't get their shit together. I was hoping to have an interview with the CEO of the Arcade Mission Services. I've got a response back. Yes, they want to do it. And then, of course, you know how I do my show. I do it on Podbean. You have to have the Podbean app in order to come on the show and listen live or talk to me live. So I gave them all that information. They're very busy, and I get that, because the first response took a week. And that's Tuesday just passed when I got that first response. And then I responded back and explained to him how you get set up to be on my show. So I don't probably expect to hear anything probably, Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday. And the last resort would be, say, I could bring the show to you. I can bring the microphones, my laptop, the interface, everything to you. They're not far from where I am. We could do a live show at the arcade mission. Either way, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. And look at other interviews, hopefully. But anyways, thank you for joining me this morning here, Sunday morning. Yeah, I was a little bit late this morning coming out here. Like I said, I was just trying to finish editing that video. Finally done. Anyways. But thank you for coming out here and listening to the Truckers Podcast, FYI, Conversation Without Barriers. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy your upcoming week. And like I said at the beginning of yesterday's show and the ending of yesterday's show, and I'm going to say it again, my shows moving forward will be Saturday mornings at 8:30, Sunday mornings at 8:30. Because I tried to do shows through the week in the evenings after work, managed to get some shows going that way, but it's just not feasible. I know what time I start work in the mornings, but the end time and getting home time reflects on whether I can do a show during the evenings, during the weekdays. And so far that's showing that it's not working. So it'll be Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings at 8:30 in the morning. So until next weekend, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, enjoy the rest of your weekend, your upcoming week, and take care. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Thank you.